Okay.
All right, today we are with Pastor Hans Trinklein. He's in South Korea, and then his wife Gretchen and two of his sons, Johnny and Mike. Or did you say Yanni? Is that what you said?
No, Johnny.
Johnny. Okay, Johnny and Mike. And so let's start off. First of all, you guys can tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you, well, Pastor Trinklein, how you came to be in South Korea, and then I guess also why you guys are separated right now.
Now, I don't know what happened, how we wound up in South. No, I do know because I got a call. I had been studying for my PhD at Concordia St. Louis. And when I had been working on my Master of Divinity to become a pastor, like 20 years earlier, I met a Korean pastor who was over in Southern Illinois. Well, he was in St. Louis, working on an advanced degree, and we got to be friends. Then he went back to Korea, and we just heard from each other once a year until he got to be president of the Lutheran Church in Korea, the denomination. And he said, our seminary and university needs some help. Have you ever considered being a missionary? And I said, no, never, as a matter of fact. But he asked whether I would be open to consider it, and that began a 2-year process of interviews and all kinds of stuff. And when I finished my doctorate, I got the call to serve the Missouri Synod as a missionary theological educator. And my whole family got pulled along for the ride. So it really turned our lives upside down because I don't know if your students know, your father, Mr. Miller, your father, Pastor Tim Miller, was my closest neighbor and closest confidant and fellow brother confessor and things while we were in Southern Illinois. We lived there for 15 years in the middle of the cornfields. Absolutely nothing around us except corn and cows and pigs. And now we are in a small suburb of Seoul. Yongin is a city of only about 1 million. So it's a smaller suburb of Seoul, the city, altogether, greater Seoul, as they would say, is 25 million people, one city. But it's actually like smaller 1 million people cities surrounding the hub, which is about, what do you think, guys, 12 million in Seoul. So anyway, half the country lives in this one city, if you consider the whole area, because the whole country is only about 50 million. And we're part of it. But to think about it, I mean, to go from living outside of a town of 1,200, where, you know, we were just about the only people in that neck of the woods. Our nearest neighbor was almost a mile away. To go to a city of 1 million, where we're on the 14th floor of an apartment building in a cluster of a couple dozen apartment buildings just like it, you know. Instead of having nothing but cows, we've got people here and here and here and here. And it's very different than living in good old farm country. We miss it. But
Yeah.
it's really something. It's an amazing place to be.
All right, so then I think to start off and kind of explain, let's see a little bit about how you, why you guys aren't, you know, um, in the same place right now. How is the coronavirus being handled in South Korea?
Well, does the family want to answer, or do you want me to answer? Because they were here.
You go ahead. You're the one that's still there.
I'm living through it. Uh, Korea, until recently, lived under, it was pretty much like a kingdom for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And it became the Republic of Korea in like 1948. So the people grew up under a highly authoritarian structure. So when the government, which is pretty much based, it's a democracy, it is, but the people are steeped in top down authority. So when the government says, everybody wear a mask, everybody does, and there have been lots of things that are restricted. Right now, they were going to open the high schools up last week, but then at the same time, they opened up some clubs in the international section of Seoul, and they were jammed. And some clown that has coronavirus visited 5 or 6 clubs. And so now there's this huge pool of like 2,000 or 3,000 people that they have to track down and see and give them tests and everything. Now, it is, you'd be surprised how much of the country is fully functioning. But I've got a jar of hand sanitizer here at the door of my office. I've got my masks. I've got everybody's social distancing in the cafeteria. All of the tables have chairs just on one side, and every other chair is missing, so that people are spread out. And the people really aren't kicking about it for 2 reasons. One, this was a hot spot, and now, before this clown in Itaewon did what he did, there was 0 cases for days in the whole country. And it was one of the hot spots. But everybody obeyed. They just stayed home. They used hand sanitizer. My hands are all dried up, but they isolated like crazy. And so I think the industries opened a little sooner than they might have otherwise. But everybody's just used to it. Now, a lot of people wore these anyway.
So how does that?
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Now, how does that adjust? How does that affect the travel that you guys have as missionaries?
Now, that's a fine question. We were all supposed to go home for home service, furlough, this summer. That's not going to happen. Okay. But we're just making do as best we can. Now, in early February, Gretchen and Johnny and I went back to the States. I had a presentation to give at a conference in Arizona where her dad and mom live. Johnny is planning on going to Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. The conference was in Phoenix. Her folks live in Phoenix. Seemed like a good idea. We all went, and then Gretchen stayed because our eldest daughter was having our first grandbaby. Johnny and I went back to Korea. Mike and Abby are too old to be under my visa. So every 90 days, they have to leave Korea and re-enter to renew their 90-day visitor visa. Okay? You follow? Well,
I follow.
In March, nobody wanted Americans. And so every place, they used to go to Taiwan or Japan or Cambodia. They just have to fly somewhere and turn around. but they couldn't do that. So they had to fly all the way back to the States. And I said, you know what? With things getting crazier, you're going to have to leave in 90 days anyway if you come back. Stay with the family, kind of an enforced vacation until things settle down. So I thought things would be settling down sooner than they are. But that leaves my whole family back in the States, me teaching like you are, Mr. Miller, uh, all online, which is a pain in the neck, but it's better than not having class at all. So that's why they are there and I am here.
All right, let's see. Here's a question from Amanda. Are sports big in South Korea?
Boys, what do you say?
They have their own professional baseball league that is very big there, and they actually just started up play on that 2 weeks ago, which is pretty exciting. And they're like ESPN picked up their games, so that baseball is very big. They've got like 10 teams in that league, and then they also have soccer, which is a very big sport all over the world, and especially in South Korea as well.
And surprisingly, basketball
Would you say
is
that?
very popular.
Why do you say surprisingly?
Well, everybody thinks that Koreans are short, and so, basketball might not be a very popular sport, but they enjoy it a lot, and a lot of my friends are really good at basketball.
And there are some tall.
Cool.
And since Mike is 6'5" and we have a basketball hoop outside of our apartment building, it has grown in popularity in our complex. It's a good way for the guys to, meet other, Korean guys their age. And Luther University has a sand athletic field, and sometimes they do baseball. Just, sand lot, as it were.
Cool. So, is it difficult for you guys to make friends? Do you know Korean well? How does that work?
I don't. I'm supposed to be teaching English, so that it's, and my schedule is pretty full. So I am not studying Korean like I should. But Mike is. And Gretchen is on her own, and Johnny is picking up just by being around. But what do you think, guys? Is it easy to meet people your age?
Is it easier to what? We have bad connection.
Is it easy to meet guys and girls your age, since you're not in school there?
It is not. I still didn't hear the question.
Is it easy to meet
There we go.
guys and girls your age?
He was drinking my juice.
Thank you.
He was drinking your juice. Did you hit him? No.
You're cutting out at
Okay,
the
why
end
is
of
he
the
crying?
question, Hans.
Did you ask, is it easy for us to meet guys and girls our age?
Yes.
Yes, that's what we asked.
It can be. Usually kids our age will be very excited to meet foreigners. And so they usually like to practice the English that they know. So it's not difficult to start a conversation with somebody, or to just be friendly, and you can hang out with those kids for a little while. But it is it's more difficult to get to know them personally, because usually the English that they know is very basic. And so unless you are good with Korean, so that you can talk with them about, you know, their interests and all of that sort of stuff, the English that they know is pretty much just, you know, introducing yourself and asking about you, and then after that they'll but just say, well, that's nice, have a good day, or whatever.
Okay, great. I'll try to put the questions on the screen so that way we can do that. You guys can hear better. So what's your favorite food in South Korea?
Mine is something called bulgogi, and I will try to get a picture of it for you. I will let the others talk while I find bulgogi pictures.
That's it.
My favorite food is takgalbi, which is a hot chicken stir fry. That really hot and spicy, and they usually eat it with like pickles and cheese, and sometimes they have little fried things that they'll eat along with it. It's really, really good.
My favorite food is something called bibimbap, and it is there's a bowl with rice at the bottom, and then it has different kinds of vegetables in a circle, and then sometimes a little bit of meat in the middle, and you stir it all together, and you add a kind of a spicy red pasty sauce to it that gives it a lot of flavor.
Helps it stick together.
And helps it stick together. But it's really good and really healthy and very colorful.
My favorite food is, I mean, it's kind of called Korean barbecue, but they call it, at least the specific dish that I like is called samgyeopsal, and it means three layers of fat bacon, kind of. And so it's like really thick layers of bacon that you fry up on a grill in front of you, and then eat the pieces with like vegetables and stuff. And I think it tastes really good. So that's my favorite.
All right, Pastor Trickline, did you find a picture of the?
I'm trying. Hang on. I can't open. I can't open what I wanted to. This doesn't work like Zoom. I'm opening it on my phone.
Yeah, down below.
Yeah.
You hit share screen down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then you click the little picture of your screen.
It doesn't show up.
And then you hit share.
Okay, hang on. But that's what it was. No.
What if I show this? That's bulgogi.
Oh, there we go.
There's bulgogi. That's the spicy.
No.
Oh, very good.
That's like sweet and
That's
savory.
True. That's true. And yours was takgalbi.
Dad is pretty much the only one in our family that can't handle spicy food very much. So if there's a sweet or savory food, he's all over that.
All right, let's we can go on. We get the picture later, that's fine, but if not, that's okay too. What are
Okay.
Oh, here it is.
Did you get it? Oh, too late. I just got rid of it.
Whoa.
Okay.
Sorry.
Should I show the deck?
Okay.
I have all kinds of
There we go.
interesting pictures that I will send you, Mr. Miller, and you can show them. You can figure out how to give them to the class, including
Very
octopus
good.
on a
Very
stick.
good.
You haven't lived until you've had squid on a stick.
Squid on a stick. Wow. I
Yep.
can't imagine that.
Oh,
It's delicious.
it is actually very good.
It just looks funny.
What are some what are some traditions in South Korea that are different than that in the United States?
Well, one of them is you don't shake hands, you bow. Maybe that's why they don't get so, they got over the pandemic quickly. I'm not sure. But that's one. What do you guys think? Coffee.
What's the question?
It's still loading.
Oh, what are some traditions?
Oh, traditions. Well, yeah, you take off your shoes when you go inside of houses, and some restaurants, some
Buildings,
cafes, churches, those sorts of buildings. A lot of them, you take your shoes off before you go in. There's usually a little room right inside of the front door that everyone takes their shoes off and puts them in these little cubby holes, like at a McDonald's play area. And then you just go inside the building.
I would say you always
That's exactly
do it at
what I was gonna.
You always do that at someone's house. You always take your shoes off before you go into their house. And some churches and some restaurants. But I've never been to a house in Korea that we haven't taken our shoes off. Have you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's a foreigner's house, though.
Oh, a foreigner's house. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm saying,
Let's take a look at this question. What is the
almost
temperature and the weather like there?
if any,
We almost
What
always
state
eat
are
with
you in?
chopsticks.
that's true. That's also tradition. And they have little tiny glasses to drink from. Nothing this big, just these little tiny glasses. That's very hard to get used to. The temperature is almost exactly, the weather is almost exactly like St. Louis. Does that help? You know what that means.
Yeah. We're in Litchfield.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're in Litchfield, so that's just like an hour north of St. Louis.
Sure. Yeah. Very similar to what you experience. It's almost the same parallel on the globe. And there's water all around us. So it's humid. It can be, anyway. So think of St. Louis.
All right. Bill wants to know, if I was to visit, where would you recommend me to go to and why?
I would say one of the things you want to do is visit a folk village. It's like a recreation of traditional housing and everything from 500 years ago. The straw roof huts and traditional artisan skills like bamboo or straw weaving or carving or blacksmithing. There is a folk village near where we live, and it is very interesting. So that's one place. What about you guys, Gretchen? where would you tell them to go?
Where would you tell someone to go if they came to visit?
I would say if people wanted to go to Seoul, some of the interesting places to see are some palaces. There are a number of palaces, I think like 4 or 5 of them. So that's one possibility. There are also some really fun and interesting markets, like outdoor markets, if you like to go shopping. And you can find so many different things there. And they have a lot of pretty gardens in Korea. And if you like doing something like an activity, they have a number of places where you can ride these bikes that have either 2 or 4 people on them, and you ride along the old rails or
Go ahead.
it's some rails, and they're called rail bikes, and you can bike along those paths and just see beautiful scenery as you're riding.
I would recommend, there's right near where we live, it's kind of south of Seoul, the capital, but they have a place called Everland, which I've heard is like the 4th largest theme park in the world or something like that. And it has some great it's kind of like a Disneyland almost, but then they also have a really cool roller coaster called the T Express, which is a wooden roller coaster, but it has the steepest drop in like all of Asia from a wooden roller coaster. And I've been there a few times and I love it there. So if you like theme parks or amusement parks, that's a great place to go.
And if you're wanting to just hang out with friends and have a good time, probably about 20 minutes on a sub ride away from where we live is it's a city called Suwon, and there's a downtown area right near the subway station where there are a bunch of small shops and restaurants and little arcades and things that you can go. And then there's a big mall there too, like, I don't know, maybe 7 stories, 8 stories, but it's pretty wide, and it has a theater on the top, and there's lots and lots of shopping. Oh, and there's a couple of underground stories as well. So that entire area, it's a really, really fun place to hang out with friends, and we've stayed there pretty late before.
Cool. And Hans, you sent me a message. Nondemand Markets. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. It's huge. It looks like.
Yeah.
Nondemand?
Yes.
Yes.
It has 16 acres, but it's in the city. It's all narrow streets with 10,000 shops in 16 acres. They're like this wide, and then there's the next one, and then there's the next one, and you can buy anything. I sent you some pictures to your email account. You can share them with your students, including Nondemand pictures.
Okay, I'll be sure to. All right, after we're done with the video, I'll be sure to send those out. Let's see. You also mentioned that an unusual tradition was that they don't entertain at home. People go out instead. So you don't have people over to your house. You just go out somewhere together.
Yeah, that's because everybody lives in apartments, not houses. 75% of the land area of Korea is mountains.
So then there's not very much land for people to live on then.
Or farming. They don't farm except in greenhouses. It's or I'm sorry, they do grow a lot of rice, but there isn't much flat land, so they build apartment buildings, big ones. So that's why, and the
All right.
apartments are tiny, so people don't entertain at home. There's no room.
It's
All right.
rare.
Here's the next question
People-
from Landon.
Okay.
Uh,
Well,
It's rare
what
for
music
people
is
to
popular?
invite you over.
mhm. What did you say, Gretchen? Missed it. Well, obviously K-pop, right?
All right. And what's K-pop like? How does that compare to our music here?
I don't know. I never listened to it. What would you call K-pop, boys? How would you describe it?
What?
We can't hear you.
How would you describe K-pop?
Describe K-pop? It's kind of like a mix of Western style pop and 80s style pop.
Okay.
It also has, occasionally will have traditional Korean feeling to it, like certain, I don't know, just the feel of it can be traditional Korean, but they're definitely trying to push modern pop and trying to stay kind of the times and to be relevant and everything. Actually, K-pop is more popular in America than it is in Korea. A lot of my Korean friends like to listen to Western. A lot of their favorite singers are Western singers, and their favorite songs are Western songs. And so, while definitely K-pop is popular in Korea, but it's kind of more of okay, yeah, there's that kind of music here, instead of, people's are there aren't a lot of K-pop fanatics in Korea.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Let's see. What about animals? What type of animals do you see in Korea?
Not many.
A
There's
lot of birds.
magpie. That I think is that the national bird, the magpie. I think so. My favorite are our cats that we brought with us.
Very good.
There are not many cats,
Let's see.
many animals.
Okay, I figured that because it's such an urban country. Are there any major monuments or statues in South Korea?
There are statues of famous people in Seoul. Um, my family. What is the name of the king that invented the Korean language?
Chosun.
What?
King Joseon.
No.
It's with an S.
King Sejong. Yeah.
Sejong. In the 1400s, there was a king. The Koreans did not have a written language of their own. They borrowed from China, of Chinese characters, very complex. And King Sejong got his smartest guys together and they designed an alphabet with very few characters to it, like 20 something consonants. And I think there's better than a dozen vowels, but it's still a small set. And the beauty of it is they are always pronounced the same. Unlike English, where pronunciation can change, it's always the same. So even a foreigner can read and pronounce correctly, but I may not know what it means. But there is a statue to King Sejong in Seoul, very famous monument. And there is a national holiday every year celebrating the Korean alphabet because it really set them free. It meant that the ordinary man could read and write without spending years memorizing Chinese characters.
Mm. So in that way, it's pretty similar to like a Western language where it's vowels and consonants instead of just
Picture.
symbols for so many things. Yeah.
Yes.
That question got me thinking about how do people in South Korea view the countries around them?
Like North Korea?
Well, yeah, that's the big one, right?
Yeah. But Korea has a history of being invaded by everybody around them. China and Japan and Russia, and everybody says, what shall we do this week? I don't know. How about we invade Korea? That sounds like fun. So they are a very tight-knit people because they have had to come together to defend themselves against others. So they are very warm into their, amongst their own. And up until 120 or 150 years ago, they were very closed off. They were called the Hermit Kingdom. They did not want, because every time a foreigner came, there was an invasion later, and it just was no good. So they are open now, and of course many of the older South Koreans want reuniting with North Korea because their family is up there. But the younger South Koreans, not so much, because they have never known a united Korea. But there are some deep wounds with Japan from what happened during World War II and earlier, because Japan invaded and ruled Korea for decades until the end of the Second World War.
And Japan in that era was not always very kind to the people they were ruling over. Let's see. What about schools? So Brendan wants to know how long does a school day last in South Korea, and how is school? Kind of broaden it. How is school different in South Korea compared to the United States?
Okay. Boys, do you want to address that since your friends are...
We have no idea what the question was, so
is it
it'll
written
be
down?
difficult to answer it.
Can you see?
No.
All right. How long do you
Did
go?
you ask about the difference between school in Korea and school in America?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, in America, college is where people start to really get their lives together usually, and really like start getting ready to go out into the world and get a job and all of that sort of things. But in Korea, that sort of grind starts all the way back in elementary school and sometimes even before. The parents are very strict and they want their kids to get into the best college so that they can get the best job so that they can have a successful career. And so they will put their kids through not only school but like dozens of after school academies and curricular activities to try to get them to have the best leg up in the competition. So a lot of my friends, at least when they were in high school, they didn't have a lot of free time, especially in high school. They would go to math academies and they would go to study rooms. They would go to science academies, English academies, and sometimes if they were lucky enough, they could go to like basketball academies or baseball academies, that sort of stuff, so that at least it was not so much academic. But they have very, very long school days. They wake up at, sometimes they'll wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning, go to a before school academy, then go to school at 9, then go all the way to 3, go straight to a study room or other academy, stay there for a couple of hours. Maybe they'll get some free time, but then they'll either go to another study room or they'll come home and do a homework until 10 or 11 at night.
I have
Wow.
a Korean teacher's assistant, and he said that most students are in school until about 10 o'clock at night. And then they have to come home and do their homework after that. And
Wow.
it,
That's intense.
and it's almost that bad, maybe a few hours less, even in grade school. It's wild.
It's very stressful for
Yes.
students. And they have something that's a little bit different between American high school students and Korean high school students. In America, you can take the ACT or a number of times over and over. In Korea, they have one test during their senior year, and one day they take it off. Everybody takes it on one day, and how you do on that test determines where you can go to college, and
It determines the rest of your
life. And so it's a very, very stressful test for a lot of Korean students. And it's I don't know if it contributes to this. It probably does, but Korea has the highest suicide rate in the world for teenagers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure.
That one day. And you can only take it once.
One time.
Yeah, I can imagine
everybody.
Is it like some sort of twisted holiday then?
No. It's
Almost.
It's called the Korean SAT. And it's just like in the States, there's no school that day for those folks. They're in testing. And it's just that the stakes are a lot higher.
All right, let's go to the last few questions here, and here's one from Landon. What's your favorite part of living where you do?
Well, I could say Korea has the fastest internet in the world, and that's true. So that's good. But I really do have to say the people that we meet, the friendship, like I said, they are warm people. It's kind of hard to, at first, get to know them because of the language and because they're a little bit more reserved, but they're such wonderful, giving people. So that's my favorite part.
What I like is that some people might not like this, but there are cameras everywhere in public, just everywhere. Everything is like CCTV. So actually, that makes Korea very safe. You never have to worry about somebody robbing you in public or mugging you in public, because even alleyways have CCTV. Like, it's everywhere and it's being monitored. So it's so safe that policemen don't even carry guns. It's really nice because here in America, I have to, especially when going through a big city, I have to, make sure that I have everything, keep checking my pockets. You have to carry your backpack in front of you if you don't want to get it slashed or something like that. But in Korea, people will leave stuff on the table if they have to go to the bathroom, and they don't worry about it getting stolen, because definitely part of that is the CCTV and the accountability, but also there's this kind of this tradition of respect in Korea, where if you don't steal my stuff, I won't steal your stuff.
Mhm.
And they tend to think about others, but in a more standoffish way, I guess. They'll leave you alone, and that's how they show their respect to you.
I would say my favorite part is the people. They're really warm and welcoming. Like, once they get to know you, it's almost like you become part of their family. And so we've experienced just a lot of kindness and a lot of love from the people that we've met in Korea, and just really a lot of hospitality and just thoughtfulness.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, for me, my favorite part is the public transportation system, because like it's miles better than any place I've ever been before, and you can just buy one little card and fill it up with money, and you can use it across the entire system: subways, buses, taxis, even, and like in that way you can do transfers for free in between a subway and a bus, or I've never tried it with a taxi before, but you can go from the subway to the bus, and if it's within the transfer period, it's free to ride the next one. So, and like this transportation can take you anywhere. Like we wouldn't even really need a car if we didn't
Want one.
want one. So
Yeah, it is breathtaking.
All right.
It is the system.
Let's see. Is there anything else about South Korea that you guys really want to make sure kids in America know that we haven't talked about yet?
Let's see. Looking at your list, but they have a holiday. You asked about holidays, and one of their holidays is called Pepero Day. And Pepero is this super thin, kind of shaped like a straw, only it's a bread, a cookie kind of dipped in chocolate and sprinkled with nuts. and it looks like this, only you buy a box of them, and they're friendship sticks. And on Pepero Day, you go around and you share friendship sticks with everybody. In addition, on Valentine's Day, the girls bring the boys chocolates. I like Valentine's Day here. And there is a corresponding day called White Day, where the guy is supposed to give something to the girl. In addition, Children's Day is a national holiday where everybody's supposed to spend the day spoiling their kids. So there is a Parents' Day also, but it is not a holiday. You don't get off of work for Parents' Day. What sense does that make? I don't think is there anything else? We talked about safety. Even little kids use the subway by themselves, and it's perfectly safe. And that's about all the super special things. Except we celebrate the 4th of July because our country started 250 years ago, right? They celebrate Foundation Day because the Joseon dynasty was founded 2,333 years before Christ. So they have a much longer history.
Yeah. All right. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
What should we pray about as we think about you and your family in South Korea?
Pray for the gospel because there was actually the Christian revival first started in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, before it was North and South. The revival started there. And in South Korea, there are people that are trying to use the gospel for personal profit. And so the true gospel is getting, people are getting a bad feeling about Christianity. And what we need is true Christians living out unselfishly what Jesus did for us and telling them and living it the way it's supposed to be. And that would bring a real revival because people would see that it's for real. What do you guys think, Mama?
I would say it's kind of two things that are connected. First, pray that God would protect us, our family, from just temptations or, most families struggle with temptations to kind of pull apart or have strife in their family. And no matter where we are, even if we're on the mission field or if we live in the country or wherever, the devil tries to tear families apart. So pray that God would protect us from that and to keep our family close and encourage and Korean families too, Christian families especially, to keep the families close and loving each other so that each individual person in the family can be a really bold and courageous witness for Jesus. So, because people look at our families, and if they see love in our families, they see it as it's different. It says they'll know we're Christians by the love we have for another. So, that's my two-sided prayer, that our family, that God would protect our family and keep us close and loving each other and encouraging each other so that we can go out journey, bold and courageous witness for Jesus, no matter he has each one of us, because we each kind of have a different different path and different things that we're doing in Korea. So does that make sense? Okay.
So
Definitely. All right. Well, we thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
sure.
We appreciate it. We'll hang on for just 1 second, but we'll go ahead and say goodbye to the kids here. I'll end the broadcast.
Okay. Bye, guys.